Welcome to Reimagining Miami Gardens. In this groundbreaking podcast dissertation, we examine the profound impact of leadership on government with a specific focus on how it shapes the city of Miami Gardens. Through insightful interviews, in-depth analysis, and compelling narratives, we uncover the intricate dynamics between leadership and governance, highlighting the transformative power of effective leadership in shaping the trajectory of a city. Join us on this enlightening journey as we explore the role of leadership in driving positive change and development in the now vibrant community of Miami Gardens.
Welcome to Reimagining Miami Gardens podcast. I'm Oliver Gilbert III, chairman of the Miami-Dade County Board of County Commissioners and the former mayor of the young and vibrant city of Miami Gardens. And I'm excited to dive into the complexities of leadership in driving positive change in cities. Today, we embark on a journey to explore the challenges and opportunities faced by newly formed cities, such as the city of Miami Gardens, in their quest for transformation. In our study, we aim to address the pressing issues that hinder city progress, from bureaucratic obstacles to limited resources and the critical role that leadership plays in overcoming those challenges. The purpose of our research and discussion on this podcast is to uncover the strategies employed by city leaders to drive successful city transformation initiatives and provide insights into the essential elements of effective leadership in urban development. Join me as we navigate through the intricacies of city management through policy and administration, examine the importance of collaboration and strategic decision-making, and uncover the valuable lessons learned from successful city transformation initiatives. Together, let's explore the transformative power of leadership in shaping the future of cities. Joining me today is Theresa, the former city manager of North Miami and the current chief operating officer of the County Commission. She'll be leading our discussion. We'll be discussing the topic of municipal finance and budget and how to ensure a city has enough money to provide the services that residents expect and need. In this episode, it's all about the money. Where the money reside? Where the money reside? Theresa.
Chairman Gilbert, thank you for having me on the show. Show me the money. So for any city, a topic of major importance is financial resources. We know that without the proper financial resources, it's difficult to provide the services that residents want and expect. We know the major source of revenue is taxes, but there's so much more to funding a city government. When it comes to taxes, what is your perspective?
I don't want to pay them. Nobody wants to pay them. Nobody wants to pay taxes. Are you kidding me? No one wants to pay taxes. Taxes? What is taxes you speak of? Listen, no one wants to pay taxes. And I would always lead out with that because people think that, I remind them I'm a taxpayer too. Like I'm a property owner also. Anything I do for you, I do for me. I'm not exempt from taxes that I pass. And so I don't want to pay taxes, but I do, and I would always communicate that you're gonna get what you pay for. And to have something, you're going to have to pay for it. One of the problems I think that we have in the public, on the public side, the politician side, the elected leader side is we like to tell people they can have everything and don't explain that they have to pay for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I would consistently say, hey, we have our budget workshops in Miami Gardens and they would call them budget workshops. But I tell them, tell me what it is you want and I'll tell you how much it costs. You want more police officers? Okay, I agree with you. We can do that. I just need you to know that more police officers hiring a police officer translates to about $100,000 a year extra. So for every one you tell me you want, if you tell me you want 20 extra police officer added to the force, I can budget that. That's an extra $2 million a year. So you tell me you want more senior programs. That's fine. This is what it costs. This is what it costs to do that. And so I would always say we can have what you want with the understanding that we all have to pay for it. And it's going to be paid for, all the services we provide are going to be paid for through a mixture of either taxes or user fees. So if you want it to be free for seniors, then taxes pay for all of it. If you wanted them to subsidize something, taxes pay for some of it. If you don't want them to subsidize it all, then their user fee pays for everything. That is just explaining it in a very basic way, and then explaining to people stuff that they know, but no one ever says to them. Like, so I would say stuff like, well, your gas is expensive, right? Yeah. It went up for us too. It didn't just go up for you. We don't have a special, pump that we pay less in gas.
Oh, you don't have a special,
we don't have a special pump.
pump?
No, there's no special pump. So it's just, we're paying the same amount. So if it costs more to drive for you, it costs more to drive for us. And those expenses are borne by us collectively. And so having those type of honest conversations about taxes and not just talking about taxes in relation to monies paid but services received, it helped me change the dynamic such that in the beginning, people would come and say, we don't want to pay taxes. In the end, my last year, people would just come and tell us what they wanted. We want more code enforcement officers. We want more cleanup crews after games. Because they understood that, and I told them, the millage rate in Miami Gardens, I think, was 6.9363. And that was the millage rate. I was not going to lower the millage rate. I wasn't going to raise the millage rate. As property values went up, what I told them was what we're going to do is we're going to have a healthy reserve. Because when I became mayor of Miami Gardens, they didn't have a good reserve. It was like, I don't know the exact number, I think it was like under 10%. And it was recommended that it be between 15 and 20%. And so when I left Miami Gardens, it was over 40%, 47%.
And let me just say that you all were in one of the best positions when COVID hit.
Yes.
And that was because of the reserves.
Yes.
And you were able to make good decisions because of that.
And people don't understand that that's what reserves allow for you, right? It allow you the flexibility. When something bad happens, you can figure it out. We ain't broke. And so I understood that we couldn't be the city that didn't have money, because fair or not, people had impressions, and people would say things about black cities primarily. They'd say that they aren't good in money, they're poor. Miami Gardens isn't a poor city. Our residents aren't primarily poor. Our residents get up and go to work every day. We have 2 major universities. We have business. We have Hard Rock City. No, we aren't a poor city. We're a working class city. We weren't going to be that city that didn't have money, that was always broke, that was going to be riddled in financial scandal and taken over by the state. We weren't going to be that city. I wasn't going to be the mayor of that place. And so I let them know that when I was running for mayor the first time, that my primary goal, when everybody else was talking about their goal was policing, their goal was this, my primary goal is to make sure our finances are straight. Because if I get our finances straight, I can do all of these other things. But the finances have to be straight. And it was a very, very, very bureaucratic way of looking at it. But it was that type of leadership that set the tone for everything else.
While you are within the city, did you have any challenges with implementing budget discipline?
Did I have any challenges with implementing budget discipline? I didn't at first. So what happens is the staff was pretty good about staying within their budgets, because when we talk about what you all needed to operate. And so we always knew that there were enough resources there for them to get the job done. Budget discipline is largely something you have to implement with elected officials. It was the elected officials who weren't very disciplined. But I was the mayor, and I wasn't afraid to push back, and I wasn't afraid to say, we're not doing this. We're not doing this. We are doing this. And so I was big on, let's put it in the budget. So if you tell us what you want to do throughout the course of the year and allow us to budget for what you want to do throughout the course of the year, that's fine. You just stick to the budget. The unbudgeted things are the things that I worry about, because the budgeted things are things that we consider. We contemplated. The public had a chance to come and speak on them. We budgeted this is happening. And so having that discipline was actually having that discipline, not so much with staff and the professionals who work in the city, but the elected leaders of the city, so that we were going to be disciplined. Because ultimately, it was going to be our discipline that was going to be the determining factor in whether the city had solid finances.
I mean, and did that work well with your colleagues on the dais? I mean, we've heard that people want to spend. And so how did you control that in terms of policy and when you came to the board?
Well, you do it in a couple of ways. You do it before you come to the board first. You come. That's the difference between being a policymaker and a politician. So the policymaker and me understood what had to happen. The politician was I had to have a big enough political footprint so that you wouldn't mess with my ideas. And so it's all, and I try to use charm and niceties, but ultimately, being a big enough politician in the community allowed me the flexibility with my colleagues that first I would help people get elected who believed like I believed. So that's the first step. You can do that. But if people don't believe as you believe, understand that you have the ability and the votes to enforce your will. So there's some things we weren't going to do. There's some things we were. And that understanding helped. That understanding helped because they can either love you and or agree with you or just be afraid of you. Either way, it works out. It works out either way. So
you've had two different councils. Can you kind of give me a difference between your first term and your second term, and if there was any differences there?
Well, the first term, it's interesting because we that was before a lot of the changes that are implemented start to take effect. And so it was more of a struggle. The second term, we had realized at that point we were financially very stable. We had turned the corner on crime. We were building out our parks. The second term, it was more, that second commission, they had an easier ride. They didn't have to make a lot of the tough decisions that we did initially because governing is about choosing. You can choose to pay for this or you can choose to pay for this. You can't pay for everything. That second commission didn't have to make choices. Everything they wanted to pay for, we could just pay for. We could do it. We could afford it by that time. And then by the time I left the city, I financially, I like to say they're trust fund babies now because they can do whatever they want to, really. I mean, unless they go crazy, they have the finances to maintain themselves very well.
Can you discuss some of any specific strategies that you implemented to make sure that you had a healthy reserve or to build it?
Well, keeping the millage flat. Keeping the millage flat. And what that means is if the millage is 6.9363, state law requires a rollback rate, or you have to advertise that you're raising taxes, but I kept the millage flat. So even as the property values rose, the millage stayed the same. I took that extra money that we didn't need and I rolled it into the reserve every time. And so I was essentially building my savings account. That's what your reserves is. You're unfunded, your unallocated general fund. I'm building my savings account continuously, just building it. And so that was one strategy. Also, trying to figure out what people wanted that could be paid for in the context of the budget and what couldn't be paid for in the context of the budget. And so I realized that a lot of the improvements that people wanted on parks for things and activities, those capital improvements, it was going to be hard to do those in the context of the budget. So I went out with a general obligation bond, which was very difficult at the time because $60 million general obligation bond for a fairly young city, people were very, very skeptical. I remember none of the elected officials actually stepped out there to help me. So, but it was all me. But I got it passed. It passed overwhelmingly. I talked about building science, technology, engineering, mathematics, recording studios, television production areas, multi-purpose buildings, a senior center, all on parks for our kids. Because people wanted to invest in that type of infrastructure. They want those type of activities available for their children in the community and for seniors in the community. And I said, we can do it, but we can't do it out of the general fund because it was too much of a strain. We need to pay a special allocation. And I talked to the residents about it openly, honestly, and I told them if they gave me the money to do it, I'd do it. And they gave us the money and we started doing it.
So it really helped for you to separate and say, I'm going to have a bond because those costs didn't have to come into the budget each year, which allowed you to continue to keep those savings and maintain a healthy reserve. Now, in terms of millage rates, the flat tax, or keeping it flat, or the millage rate flat, is still a raise in the taxes. How do you explain that to residents when we say, hey, it's going to be a flat, I'm not going to change the millage, but then they see that their bill is higher?
Well, I explain it to them like they explain it to themselves. I say, when you're in your house, right, and something goes bad, and you weren't expecting a cost. What did you do? How did you pay for it? You say, well, I take money out of my savings. I said, well, our reserve is our savings. And right now we don't have good savings. And so I need to keep this right here because I need to build our savings. Because when an emergency comes, I need to be able to respond to it. That's what it is. And so that's going to be the millage. Now, within the context of that, tell me what it is you want, though. Tell me what you want. One lady wanted more crossing guards. That's something we can do. I understand why you're saying that. All right. More code enforcement, people throwing trash. Well, I think she just wanted to cite her neighbors, but it's more code enforcement officers. I mean, so talk to me and make sure those services are delivered, but explain to them honestly why I'm doing it. This is why I'm doing it.
One of the things when there's a city, there's always priorities within cities about which departments get what money. And that becomes an issue within the city. But my question to you is, how did you prioritize where the dollars would go within departments?
Well, people say it's prioritizing, but in truth, we all know that police get everything. That's right. Police get everything. So police get, they're going to be our most expensive employees, and so they're going to be our greatest expense. That was understood, but also by keeping the millage rate flat, what it did was allow us to make sure those other departments weren't starved. And so if you think about a city like Miami Gardens, police is in the general fund and parks is in the general fund. So, those are the two big things that's in the general fund. But we were doing all of our capital improvements with parks out of the general obligation bond. So it helped a lot. And the capital improvements with police with regard to building out the technological ability, a real-time crime center, shot spotter, license plate readers, all of those things was also done through the general obligation bond. So the GOB it gives us that extra pot of money to do those things, to help those two things that are coming out of general fund, which also loosens up the general fund money for other departments.
When you're talking about a city and what you're going to fund, I know you said police and parks, but give me your top 3 that you must expend, excluding police.
Parks, public works. And see, but remember, so it's complicated because I say police and parks, but that's because development services is an enterprise fund. It funds itself. So, but them doing their job built the tax base in Miami Gardens. That's what's actually increasing the value of the properties. So development services is an important aspect of what I did in Miami Gardens. I mean, it's an important aspect in Miami Gardens becoming financially stable because, changing the zoning from all residential, adding density, doing an entertainment overlay district, changing zoning to allow for warehousings and industrial uses because those uses actually tax better and they require less services. Those things that actually helps the reserves. It helps the bank account. But that stuff doesn't happen in the general fund. It happens in development services.
So, but in development services, you are actually increasing your tax base,
yes.
Right? So our taxes are limited, but if you can increase your tax base, you have more.
We have more. And it also, listen, I remember somebody telling me they didn't want to, we don't need this other warehouse. I was like, yes, you do. Like every city needs a diversity of uses. You can't just have a city with single family homes because you need those other uses that don't require services that use the same space but tax at a higher value. And so you do need warehousing. You do need industrial uses in cities. You need density in cities. You need to be able to build straight up 10, 15, 20 stories. You need to be able to do those things. You can't just be a city of this size as a single family home trying to provide these services. It doesn't work financially. Like it just won't pencil out ever. And so I would explain that to them so those type of fiscal responsibility conversations were actually had at zoning meetings when we changed zoning laws and people complained. You're complaining, but this is why we can't do this, 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 and this. because because we're looking out over the city and it's completely flat. That means we have to tax single-family homeowners at a much higher rate. And so having those explanations, explaining what it was, and what I found was when I explained it, even those people didn't agree with me, they got it. And a lot of people say, "Yeah, I get it now." And so I remember a lot of the zoning changes that I made when I was mayor of Miami Gardens, and I would, it was a routine. They would come and complain and say they didn't want it. And we do it because it was the right thing to do.
What do you think was one of your toughest financial decisions during your tenure as mayor?
Oh, it was definitely going out for the general obligation bond, because general obligation bond, we go out for it and the economy isn't great at the time, and I'm asking people to pay a little extra to do these extra things. And it was very tough. It was very tough, which is why when I said previously, no one was out there with me. No one was out there with me. They thought it was a suicide mission. They literally thought that was politically a suicide mission for me. But it was just something, having been born and raised here, having spoken to people and listened to them. And most importantly, I listened to them. I've heard what they said they wanted. I know, I'm looking at this data that says they're spending all of this money taking their kids to Davy, to the gymnastics, and all these other things. They want to be able to do those things here. Why shouldn't they be able to do those things in their community, on their public parks? And so I knew if I talked to them about it, and I talked to them about doing those things for their children, I talked to them about the dignity that our seniors deserved, and I talked to them about the need for public safety, and I taught them that this is the bond, this is what we needed. I knew that we could convince them, and we did. The bond passed overwhelmingly, but it was difficult.
So at what point did your colleagues come on board with the GOB?
Come on board publicly, probably at groundbreakings, or when it passed. Success has a million parents. Failure is a bastard. And so we had been successful. And they were like, "Oh, we got to get on board with this." And ultimately it becomes a spark, because us investing in our infrastructure actually encourages private businesses to come invest in Miami Gardens. And so it helped actually spark everything. But there wasn't a lot of people. It's not like they were actively against it. They didn't campaign against it. They all wanted it, but they didn't want to say it. And so I've never had that problem. I've never believed that if I say it, if I believe it and I say it and you give me an opportunity to talk to you about it, you might come with me, you might not. But I just like my chances. I'm not going to be afraid to tell you what I think. You elected me to tell you what I think. I didn't run pretending to be somebody else.
So at some point, did you have to put in an agenda item in order to put out the bond?
Absolutely. And my message to them was, let the people decide. Let the people decide. If you're right, someone tell us it's a tax increase. Well, you're right. It is a tax increase. But they'll get to do it. They'll get to raise their own taxes for it.
So you were able to convince your colleagues by telling them.
Just let the people decide. And if I'm wrong, then I'll be wrong.
Now, when you first proposed this GOB bond and your colleagues voted for it, did you know where they stood quietly about it?
Well, I knew that they were in favor of doing the projects, and knew they thought the bond would be a good idea. The bond was good government, but I knew that I wasn't going to necessarily. No one was going to be a profile and courage. It was really,
except you.
Yeah, no, it was really crazy though. I mean, now I think back at it, I must have been out of my mind, because it was tough. I remember the first town hall meeting we had. It was at the amphitheater at the community center, and it was packed. Like, people were there, and the people who didn't want it were there, and they were out loud, and it was just me and the manager. And the manager was sitting back, and he was like, "Okay, boss, you got it." I was like, "Okay." So I go on stage, and I just start answering questions. I do a 5-minute opener, and I start answering questions, and I stand there for hours, and I just take questions. And at the end, I had turned the crowd. And at that moment, I said, "No, I got them. I got them." And I remember a friend of mine, Lee Prince, Freezy, Flo Rida's manager. He comes up to me and he says, he had gone to Carroll City Senior High School, volunteering in our parks. He says, "I'm going to talk to Flo. we want to help you do this. You're doing good work. This is going to help our kids. And he said, but I don't see how you just stood up there all by yourself. That was crazy. And I remember that it was Flo Rida and the Miami Dolphins that gave me the money to actually help advertise, to communicate about what the bond could do. And that was so interesting because Flo Rida, a kid from Miami Gardens, I understood. The Dolphins, it was interesting because they have to pay the bond. And they're the largest property owner and the largest taxpayer. So they were giving me the money to advertise doing something that would raise their taxes. And so when people talk about, the relationship with the city and the Dolphins, I always think back to that because that's not how it was previously. And you don't see that most times from your large business sectors. They don't have kids who are going to be on the parks. They're not at the senior center. These things won't affect them at all. They're giving me the money to fund the campaign that raises their taxes. And so that's when I knew that even if we disagreed on some things, that they were really a member of this community because they looked out and they were in the audience too. They saw what was needed. He's a judge now, Judge Marcus Bach-Armis. Mm-hmm. He was in the audience. He was like, no, we need to do this for the community. So needing to do it for the community, we go out, we get it passed.
Did you have any separate conversation with the Dolphins about this? Or do you think that was just at that meeting?
I had talked to them about it, and I think they were on the fence. And I said, well, you all just come to the meeting. Come to the meeting. But because I don't think people initially thought that I was going to be able to get it done. And from my perspective, I was young and foolish enough to think that I could do anything. And so if I just spoke to people honestly and transparently and told them how I saw it and listened to them and the ideas about that the bond that came from them, the ideas for the buildings, the ideas for the senior center, the ideas for public safety, it came from the public. It didn't come from me. It was from me listening to them about the things that they wanted in their communities for their kids and their seniors and their safety. It was from them. So I'm just listening to you, and I'm finding ways for us to do this thing together.
Bonds and GOBs have failed in many, many cities.
Yeah.
And so my question to you is, how do you message that? How does someone in another city message that? What we found is that so many times it's the own people that are complaining about what they need in the city who are helping to fail the bond.
Well, yeah, no, we had that here too. We had a group of people who they called themselves activists. They meet all the time, and the bond was everything they said they ever wanted, but they were against it because, you're not going to do it right. Those are people who are going to be against everything, but it's not the critic that counts. Not the man who points out where the strong man stumbles or how the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena. The credit belongs to the person who's doing it. And so my favorite question, and I still use it now as a county commissioner, because we're talking about now rapid mass transit. And so, and how we need to, what the money we need to raise and do to fix it. And what I say to people all the time is, well, okay, you don't want to do it. What's your plan? What is your plan? Don't let people just say, no, we shouldn't do this. What's your plan? Make people come up with a plan. What's your plan for these parks? What's your plan for these kids? What's your plan for these seniors? What's your plan for public safety? What is your plan? And so a lot of times people approach it and they're very defensive. And so because they're defensive, they're always attacking. I'm nobody's victim. I understand it's in a fight, but if we're in a fight, I plan on throwing punches too. What is your plan? You don't get to just stand in front of here in a marketplace of ideas and say my idea is bad. What is your idea? How are you going to fix it? You tell me how you're going to fix it, and maybe I'm wrong. Let me hear it. And if you just let me hear it. And what I found was people didn't have a plan. They just had a criticism. They didn't have a plan. And so that helped because then we were at least establishing that while my ideas might not have been perfect, I was the only one who was actually proposing something that would make a difference. The question now is, are you willing to pay for the things you said you wanted? But remember, one of the things that I established previously was I established as a matter of course and rule that if you have it, you have to pay for it. Nobody's going to give us anything. So that had already been ingrained in the people. And we had already made those decisions, like when they decided to come into incorporating your own police department, forming your own police department is an extraordinary expense. They'd already made the decision to do that because they said, we want to have it, so we got to pay for it. So the community had been conditioned that way even before me. I just kept reiterating it. We're going to have to pay for everything we have. And we want it. We want these nicer facilities that people have in other communities. Well, those are people in other communities pay for it. What you going to do? Stop letting people tell you that you're a poor city. You're not. You're not. You have the money to do whatever it is you need to do. And we went at it.
It's amazing to kind of hear you getting to a place where you speak to the residents and get them to understand you want it, you pay for it. When did that come to your mind to say, this is what I'm going to talk to them about?
I mean, it's sometimes we make government harder than it is. And we do some things that are complicated in government. But at its basic point, it's really just like your family and your household with incomes. So when you talk about, a bond to build a building, okay, it's a mortgage. It's a mortgage. Yeah, a reserves is your savings. Taxes is your income. It's a mortgage. These things have to pay for themselves. And so talking to people, and that's how I saw it. That's how I always saw it. So it was, and in our community, we didn't think in Miami Gardens that the county ever really gave us our fair share. And so when a city becomes a city in 2003, the underlying theme is if we're going to have it nice stuff, we're going to have to pay for nice stuff. And so we always understood that as a family and as a community, that, there weren't, like in the meetings and stuff, there weren't nice trees and there wasn't, like landscaped and none of that stuff when we was unincorporated. Them things was just out there bare. Naked medians. Yep. No landscaping. Ain't no flowers nowhere. You could drive through the whole area and not see no police officer for a long time. We weren't, they weren't giving us stuff. We knew we wanted it. We knew we had to pay for it. Reminding them of that. And they didn't have to settle. Like, there was this idea a while back that everybody wanted to move west of 75. And I would always say, I'm not moving anywhere. I'm going to build the place where I want to live. I'll build it. I'll build it. I will design it. I will build it. I'm going to stay right here in the city. And I started talking about that to our residents. Build the place where you want, that you want. This isn't stagnant. It doesn't have to exist this way. Tell me what you want. And it doesn't happen overnight, but we can get it done.
Let's talk about kind of the leadership that you use in this mind frame. I look at this as very transformational in terms of financing and budgeting. What were your thoughts in terms of your leadership strategy as you navigated? A, we want to talk about how you navigated the GLB bond, and B, how you navigated the decision to say, we're going to pay for the things that we want.
That it wasn't so. And transformative is important because one of the core principles of transformation, or transformative leadership, is that you need a charismatic leader. It makes it easier, but you also let people know the burden isn't just on him. That it's all of us. And so when you say, "Hey, we have to pay for it," it's us. It's not just my responsibility. It's our responsibility to change this. We have something that looks this way and operates like this. We want it to look this way and operate it like this. These are the things that we have to do to change it. Are we willing to meet that test? Are we willing to do it? And yes, I can be the messenger. I can talk to people. You put me in the room and I'll be that leader, but understand that these are our goals. These are goals because I heard them from you. I didn't make them up. You told me you wanted this for your children. You told me that you wanted this for seniors, and you told me you wanted this for safety. That's what you told me. This is what we decided. Now let's go get it. And that type of leadership, transformative leadership, transformation leadership, that speaks to the idea that the burden of doing things don't just fall on one person. They fall on the group. And that leader communicates what's necessary. And once communicating what's necessary, there's fidelity to those efforts. And that fidelity is what ultimately transforms the entire situation. I couldn't have done it by myself. I could not have done it by myself. I needed them. And even my colleagues on the council, listen, you made a good point. They could have just said, no, we're not voting to put it on the ballot. I needed them. They all believed in me just enough. So even if they thought I was a little crazy, he's got to be crazy. These people ain't going to do this. Yeah.
You might have been crazy.
I might have been crazy. But they believed me just enough to give me the votes to put it on the ballot. Let me just make my case to the people. Let me just talk to them. Let me talk to them. And if they say no, they say no. It doesn't cost you anything. The ballot going to be printed anyway. It's going to be fine. Let's just try it. And it worked out.
So as you were leaving the city, as the mayor, we know you left it really healthy. Did it cause you any pause to see how the city would continue with respect to finances?
Yeah, you always have pause because, like I said before, I think that it's one thing when people who, and I'll relate it back to basic terms, people who have money their entire life don't see it the same way as the people who was poor and had to make money to get to the same point. And so I was always, and I still am a little concerned sometimes because they don't know the newer leaderships in the city. They don't know where we were. They didn't understand the type of measures we had to do to actually get here. And so, but I also believe in the continuity of leadership, and I also believe in the process. So I believe it my job to be, as a leader, to do the best I can and to lead the city in a better position than it was when I found it. And then my job is to trust the people. The same people who elected me elected somebody else after me. Trust the people. You have to trust the people. And if it isn't working, trust the people to self-correct.
So I was going to say, elections have consequences.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
they might have to self-correct. Financially, and we look at this. I'm looking at this from the perspective of those that run for office. That's a big commitment for running for office and making that claim. What are your thoughts in terms of someone who may run but is not ready to commit to a financially stable community?
Well, I mean, everybody's going to say that they are going to commit to a financially stable community. Everybody's going to say they're going to have good finances. The thing I would do is when I was running for office, I never once said in my entire political career that I would never raise taxes. I've never said it. I've always told the truth. I don't want to because I got to pay them too, and I make less money than y'all. I don't want to raise taxes, but I'm going to do whatever's necessary. I will do whatever's necessary. Look, this isn't, and in Miami Gardens when I was the mayor, it's not something I could have fail. The essential functions of this city has to go forward. If something happens and I have to have a police force, then I have to raise money to have more police officers, then I got to do it. I got to do it. And so that I would never, because I would never say that. And I remember being on the stage with people at debates and everybody's talking about, I will not raise taxes. Because it seems popular to say, right? It's people want to hear. Because no one wants to pay more taxes. Neither do I. And I remember saying, no, I won't say that. And I think it's irresponsible. Because you never know what's going to happen. Now, I will tell you is that if I do raise, I have to propose a millage raise. I'll talk to you all about it and explain why. And I'll give you an option. We can raise the taxes or we can find ways to make cuts. But understanding, I'm not going to tell you that you can cut services without cutting people. In governments, when people say reduce services, they're saying firing people. And such a large number of people who worked in Miami Gardens, lived in Miami Gardens, it would become problematic because you'd be firing your neighbors. So speaking very honestly about that, even as a candidate, there was never an expectation that I wouldn't do it or I would do it, but I would be thoughtful about whatever I did. And so creating the expectation of thoughtfulness, and I would communicate it to you, and it wouldn't be done in secret, and we would debate it. And if we're doing it with something we had to do, that's the atmosphere that had been created. And I think that when people are running for office, and I'm not saying that you have to be me, but you never want to take things off the table that you really may have to do. Because my great fear was always becoming a liar.
What would have been your plan if the GOP had failed?
I don't think I had a plan. I didn't have a plan. it's like there was no plan. There was failure wasn't an option. We were going to go forward. I mean, I suppose we would have kept doing things exactly how we were doing them and making improvements a little bit at a time. What the GOP allows you to do is advance capital projects faster than you ordinarily would. So we probably would have just started doing them a little bit at a time, and it would have definitely hampered the transformation of the city.
Now, I ask that because people who might be listening are probably those who've gone through a failed bond. What is your advice for that? Do you go back again? Do you do incremental?
I mean, you start doing the work. You show them successes. You start doing the work. But I'll say is bonds because of their nature, you're paying money to do something outside of the realm of the budget. They should almost be forward-looking. Most communities will vote for the future. They'll vote for kids. They'll vote for that type of access. Most communities will, if you message it right. Because we, as Americans, we're funny, especially here in South Florida. You know, so many people, 50% of the people in South Florida were born in a different country. And they come to America wanting something better, not just for themselves, but more importantly for their children. They didn't want their children to grow up in the place and the situation where they were. And so they will invest in that. And you can say it in Spanish, you can say it in Creole, you can say it in Portuguese, you can say it in Chinese. It's true of every ethnicity, of every culture, said in any language. People will pay for their children to have a better opportunity than them. You have to talk about that, explain that, and then they need to have trust that you'll do what you say you're going to do. And one of the things that I brought into the general obligation bond argument was a high personal credibility, personal popularity poll number. I knew they trusted me. For I am going to, if I say it, I'm going to do it. I remember our city manager was like, man, if he say he's going to punch you in your face, you should just start running. Because if I said I'm going to do it, this is my full intention. And then if I can't do it, I come back to you and tell you I couldn't do it. This is why. I deliver or I communicate. And so people knew I said, whatever I said, I meant. If I said we were going to do it, we're going to do it. And that type of credibility attached to our efforts. Like we're saying we're going to do it, we're going to do it. We're going to do it.
So what I'm hearing is that not only do you have to message it right, but you have to work on having that ability and that credibility to move it forward.
Yes. And so in that way, you know, there's all these, and I believe that especially with regard to the budget, transformation leadership theory is probably more important, but there's also some authentic leadership in there also. Because that type of authenticity, it's helpful that people believe in you. It's helpful that you have a history of keeping your word. It's helpful that those things happen. But that's back to establishing the relationships beforehand, before you do the work. Before you're actually in the spot where you need to make the ask, do you have a history of coming through? Do you have the history of delivering? What's your history? And so because people aren't always writing stuff down, but they are always taking notes. So it's helpful to have receipts.
As we talk about money, better have those receipts.
I got receipts.
All right. Any closing and final thoughts?
Talk to people and listen to people. Ask them what they want. Connect what they want with them having to pay for it. Set a vision and let them know that it's their responsibility as much as yours. It's the keeper of the flame. The keeper of the flame is us all. So having good finances in a city, having good services in a city, it's much about the people who are delivering it and the people who are paying for it. We're partners in this effort. Just remember that and communicate it.
Thank you for listening to Reimagining Miami Gardens. Join us for our next episode as we dive into the leadership principles that guided the transformation of Miami Gardens into the vibrant city it is today. Until then,